Okay, let's see if we can make this one look good. Oh, my hand's shaking, folks. I hope the camera doesn't show this too much. I hope the automatic camera shake thing helps, because this phone, I think, can compensate for camera shake. Hopefully it will, because I've got a long way to go today to shoot my demos. So just going to lighten that up a bit. Actually, no, I don't think we're going to lighten this one. It's got very pastel colours, so we don't want to lose the colours in it. So let's see what we've got. It is Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Oh, keeping up with the Joneses. Fuck, I hate that phrase. That's what rich people do, is they get highly competitive with each other in the neighbourhood. And that's the old saying, keeping up with the Joneses. I think we're going to enlarge this to 200%. But Mr. and Mrs. Jones, it's a shop. And to me, it just makes me think of the phrase, keeping up with the Joneses, which is an old cliche. I really find these cliches really quite distasteful, especially when people's lives actually are run in that fashion. Like, if people really are keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak, well, it shows a really bad attitude towards your neighbour and your life and people in general. And it shows that you're shallow. Now that looks shit. It shows a sense of shallowness when your life becomes a series of materialities, like you become too materialistic. You want to have the biggest television or the biggest car, and you want to just keep competing on these trivialities, and you sort of miss out on life, and your life just becomes a series of trivialities, and it's really quite distasteful the way people just become so materialistic. Sure, we need material things, we need to have things that are nice, but we don't put our lives and our hearts and our souls into it. So, we don't worship these things, because people just worship materialism. And to me, it's meaningless. Now that looks really quite nice. That'll make a good master copy. So it's really meaningless. And why fight your neighbours? Over stupid things like who's got the biggest car and who's got the biggest, SUV, which is another form of car. Who really gives a fig who's got the biggest SUV or who's got the most Christmas lights? Oh, Christmas lights, I love Christmas lights, but again, we don't use that as a means of competition. Maybe a little bit of competition is okay in that respect, I don't know, but generally speaking, we don't want to just get so bogged down with competing on, how should I put it, trivialities. And basically, it'd be nice just if people would be friendly towards each other, instead of feeling this need to compete and to, but that's the way the world has become. It's become a world where money becomes a sort of a demigod. It becomes a god of some descript. It's not a god that I find particularly pleasant. It's got teeth, it's got claws, and it'll tear anything apart that gets in its way. And that's why greed is so bad, because when people become greedy, it's like the human race doesn't matter anymore. The environment doesn't matter. So keeping up with the Joneses, it can't be good for the planet, especially when you're buying new things all the time and you don't need to replace them. Your SUV, you should use it as long as you can get it serviced and get spare parts for it. But why buy the biggest one or the or the latest one, when the one that you've got is going to serve you really well as it is. You don't need new things. Even sometimes I feel a sense of this materialism in my own life. Like, I've got this phone, which is a Galaxy S8 Plus. It was a flagship product, but because now it's 2019 and oh fuck, I don't want that. No, stupid fucking user interface distraction. But basically, I thought, what the fuck? I don't want auto. What the fuck is this? But basically, now I've got to go find what I was enlarging on. I think I used this. But basically, I don't need to replace this phone, for example. This phone is no longer the flagship model. It's old. It's out of date in corporate sense. But basically, this phone is still good. I get updates for it. Software updates keep coming, and I download and install them. And it's still a good phone, but I'm not going to replace this phone just because it's not anymore the latest and greatest gadget. So this is an example of something that I've decided on. This phone is still good. It's not the greatest model at this stage because, hey, it was a 2017 model and it was the greatest thing at the time. I needed the phone, but now I don't need to I don't need to replace it or to buy a new one. I'm going to hang on to this phone as long as I can. So it's good for the planet, good for my pocket, and you know, and I don't give Samsung the glory of them making more money than they need to. So, you know, you got to think like that, folks. Now I've done a really bad job at positioning these, but I think this demo looks okay. But you get my drift. I'm going to hang on to this phone. I'm not going to replace it just because it's not the latest and the greatest. So I'm not going to keep up with the Jones, even though I don't have anyone I'm competing with. I'm just going to hang on to this phone. It still does the job. So now I'll just leave it at that. Gotta go.